Hey Bonsai Society, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's mini series is all about transforming tiny trees, and we're going to be potting them up into little bonsai pots. Before I start working on this tree, I'd like to just take one moment to tell you that at the last US National Exhibition, I met very many of you. You know, I've mastered the art of bonsai, but I'm not very good with technology. I don't even own a cell phone, and I just check my iPad once a day to see whether I have any messages. So I was amazed to see how many of you came up to tell me how much you enjoyed watching these videos that we've been putting out for over 2 years. How much knowledge they gain from them. Thank you for coming up and shaking my hand and posing for selfies. I really appreciate that backing that you're giving me, because I didn't know how important it was until I hit Rochester and realized how many of you out there are really watching these videos. So today I'm going to be creating some miniature-sized bonsai. In Japan they call them Shohin, which mean little things, and there's actually two categories. The smallest ones, which are very tiny, are called Shito or Keshitsube, and the next size up are called Mame or little beans. Now we're going to be doing some Mame bonsai today. Mame should not exceed about 9 inches tall, 21 centimeters. So if we look at this tree here, we're going to see that it's much taller than that. So we're going to have to reduce it in size so that it will be considered a Mame bonsai. So that's what we will be doing right now. First of all, if I look at it, you can see we've got some nice curves here all the way up to here, and then I've let this grow out. I've just let it grow out so that we'll take it out of the pot. This is for a fertilizer bag. We don't need that right now. So I've let it grow out to increase the size of the trunk, but today we're going to be reducing the trunk height. We'll be removing this. By the way, look at, this is a Grewia, or a Grewia is actually a tree, a small shrub from South Africa. It's in the linden family, okay? And Grewia occidentalis have these lovely little mauve colored flowers, or lavender colored. They look like miniature water lilies, and they flower on the tree's new growth in summer. So you can see them here, and it's full of buds, and the buds open up every day, so it's constantly full of flowers all summer long. A really nice tree for bonsai. It doesn't take our frosts though, so you do have to bring it into a cool room in the winter. So, what you want to do when you're creating Shohin bonsai, small size, is find a tree with smaller leaves. The leaves are not actually that small. They're about medium size. They're about this size. But they do reduce well. As you can see through pruning, I have reduced the size of these leaves. And right now it's in its pre-bonsai stage. It's still in training. So once I reduce it even more and put it into a pot, it will stay quite dwarf. The leaves will be quite tiny. So now I will begin by the bottom branches. Now our first branch is right over here. It's actually quite large. So we do, I want to show you the front of the tree also. So I will take a piece of wire and indicate my front so that you guys won't be confused. I want the tree coming towards you, so I will put the front right here. The tree is leaning toward the front, and this will be my first branch. Now, you want to see whether it's a small size bonsai or a large size bonsai. You want to see the trunk rising from the ground almost up to the apex or the top of the tree. The thing with Shohin bonsai is not only do the leaves and the flowers and the fruit have to be smaller size, but because it's a very compact version of bonsai, the proportions have to be smaller too. So as you can see, the curves in the trunk have to be closer than in a large size bonsai. The first curve has to be quite large. The second curve a little bit tighter, and they get tighter and tighter as we go up towards the top. So you can see the curves here. Now this is my first branch, and we want to see the trunk. This is hiding the trunk. A branch should never be more than about 1/3 the length of the trunk, the intended trunk. So this branch is very long, so I will have to reduce it quite a bit. So here we go. It's about the right size now. Don't worry about cutting it back. It does grow back very well. It's a very vigorous tree, a strong grower, which is a good thing when you're creating shohin or very tiny bonsai. You want a tree that's very vigorous. Now, the second branch is on the opposite side. This branch is a little bit weaker, but we do have to shorten it. Here we go. Now there's a very long extension going toward the back that we don't need at all. So we're going to remove that completely here. Okay. Now we have a back branch here. Okay. You can see it from the front. It's this branch right here. It's a little bit overwhelming. Back branches, much as front branches, should be shorter. They shouldn't take up too much space. So here we're going to cut it back quite a bit. There we go. Don't forget also, because Grewias flower on the new growth, that in the spring you have to cut the branches back quite severely. Otherwise, your new flowers will be very, very far from the branches. So you want to keep these trees very compact. Okay, so we've shortened the back branch. Now we want to go to the next branch up, which is this one here. This one here has some branches that are growing too much upwards, so we will shorten them. Now I have a little front branch here, so I'm going to have to wire that down a little bit. Now, it's always best to prepare a tree to become its future self. So this one was already sort of pruned and looked after so that it would become a shohin bonsai. The curves were preordained by me, and that's what you want to do. You want to not have to change them that radically. Okay, and now we're getting up near the top here. Now the tree has to be roughly triangular in shape, and this branch is too strong, so we'll cut it back a bit. But our top is quite weak visually, so this is where we're going to have to get some bonsai wire in here, and we're going to try to compact the top a bit. So what I'm doing now is just wiring some of these upper branches with some aluminum wire, and the aluminum wire is actually quite small. It's a very small gauge. It's actually 1 millimeter, so it's very tiny because the branches are tiny. The general rule when you're using aluminum, it's a very weak wire, so that you actually want to use a wire about half the thickness of the branch that you're going to transform. So here we go with this one. And I'm going to repeat on this one and then go up to the top. This is the little branch that I'm using. Here we go. Try not to catch your wire, your branches or your leaves under the wire. So here, removing some leaves. I like to wire more often in early spring or the fall when the trees haven't yet gotten any foliage. The front branch is sticking up a bit, so I'm going to put a little bit of 1.5 of aluminum wire so that I can move it down a little bit. I think it'll be prettier. Now what I'm doing is I'm anchoring the wire. Whenever you're using wire, you have to use one piece of wire to wire two different branches. Otherwise, when you go to bend the branch, it'll just pop back up again because it's not anchored. So here, what I'm doing is anchoring it down, and now we'll finish the other side. The trick is to, when you're wiring, is to not wire too tightly. The wire does have to touch the wood of the branch or the trunk. It does have to touch, but on the other hand, it shouldn't be sinking in. You have to give the tree a place to really grow. This wire is left on for usually close to one growing season so that it'll hold the branch in place. The tree actually has to grow another layer of cambium that is going to hold the curves that you give to the placement that you give to the branch. Usually we start by wiring the bottom branches. In this case, I actually did the opposite, but that's quite okay. I've been doing this for so long, I think I could do it in my sleep. There we go. Okay, well, there we pretty well have it. The shape is there, the shape's been given. Now it's up to us to repot it into a small bonsai pot. Presently, for big trees, there's a golden rule that of 6 to 1, so that for every 1 inch of the diameter of the trunk at the base, it should not exceed 6 inches high. So this trunk is actually half an inch. So actually, the tree ideally should be about 3 inches tall. But that's the golden rule when the tree gets older. Now the tree is quite young. It will eventually, the trunk will eventually thicken up and it'll approach the golden rule. If you had wanted it to do it faster, what you could have done is leave a little sacrificial branch growing from the base of the trunk. And actually that sacrificial branch can be left to grow a few feet long. And that's what would thicken up the base of the tree faster. The base of the tree is, in Japanese, it's called the nabari. So you want to really have the thickest base possible. It gives it a look of age. Okay, so now we're going to choose a pot for this little tree and get it potted up. So I've actually taken out a few pots. Now, we must always remember that the choice of pot depends on the what the prettiest part of the tree is. Sometimes they're growing for the beauty of their trunk. Sometimes they're growing for the beauty of their bark. Sometimes they're growing for the beauty of their flowers or fruits. In this case, it's growing for its flowers. That beautiful lavender flower that I showed you a minute ago, this flower here. So we want to choose a color of pot that is probably the opposite on the color scale, the color wheel, the opposite color of this. It's sort of hard. I've put Grewia into yellow pots, and I don't think it's a very good choice. I didn't like it. I put them into white pots. They look a little bit washed out. So I think some of the nicest colors to go with this lavender color is actually sort of greenish, a pale green, a celadon green. So we're going to take out a few pots and decide. Also, what's very important is the pot cannot be too big. We have to choose the pot according to the size of the tree. So the pot should be about 2/3 the height of the tree. So we want a pot that's no more than about 5 inches long, okay? And in this case, this is called an informal upright, or Myogi style in Japanese. And usually you'd put them into a rectangular or oval shaped pot. So we're going to try to choose one. Because the tree is flowering, first of all, flowering and fruiting trees, zoki, they're called in Japanese, are considered to be very feminine. So we want a pot that's sort of a little bit more organic in shape, rounded or rounded edges at least. We also want a pot that's glazed to bring out the color of the flowers, as I mentioned, maybe a celadon green. And we want a pot that's sort of informal, no high legs or... Okay, so now we're ready to pot up this little tree, and we have to choose a pot. I brought out a nice little lavender pot here, and a green pot that should go very well with the lavender colored flower. But if you look at it with the tree, it's a little bit large. I think my tree would be lost in it. Okay, it's too large this way. Generally the tree should be, or the pot should be slightly shorter than the outside branches. So let's eliminate this one. Next is an interesting pot. It's not hand painted. It's a Japanese pot. It's decal. It's not a bad quality though. Quite interesting. So this one here is a rectangular pot. This would give the tree more depth, which is a good thing for flowering trees. They need a little bit more depth in the pot to gain a little bit more vigor to send out more flowers. So that's a choice too. And this little white baby here is a Sarah Rayner pot. It's very oval and very, how could I put it, feminine. It goes with the tree. But because my tree is a little bit more angular, I think I'm going to stick to this little pot here. I like the size of it with the tree. Don't forget, the tree can grow a little bit more. I like the color. As you can see, it's a happy sort of compromise between green and sort of bone white. So it will bring out the color of the flower quite well. Okay? And it's got good depth. So let's go with that. So now we're going to put some screening in the bottom so that this soil won't pour out. And we'll cut 2 little squares of screening to attach that screen right, cover the holes. You can see the holes here, okay? So we've got some screening. Now this screening here, actually it's plastic screening. It comes from the dollar store. I buy little rolls of it. It's about 1 meter long, And here in Canada, it costs about $3 for a meter by about 20 inches wide. Okay, so now we're going to attach it into the screening into the pot. So what you want to do is take a little piece. This is 1.5 millimeter aluminum wire, and we'll do a couple of loops here. So it looks like this, and then I open them up a bit to the size of the holes, and then turn down the ends here and pass it through the screening. So here we are, and you'll see we'll put it in here like this. We push against it and turn down the ends like that. So the screening holds the wire in very tightly. Nothing can get in and out of that. So let's do the other one very quickly. So now the two screenings are attached into the pot, covering the holes. But now we have to tie the tree into the pot. Otherwise, if it's a windy day or an animal or someone comes along, they can knock the tree out of the pot, especially when you're carrying them around, putting them in an exhibition. So here I'm using some fine wire, putting it through the two holes, and then I will tie the root ball of the tree into the pot. Okay, so now the pot is ready. Now what I will be doing is removing the excess of soil so it'll get into the pot. So here we go. The pot I will put on the side. Now, you do want to see the root splay here. You don't want to take too much soil off of the surface, but when you're repotting, always start on the top, okay? Once the excess soil is removed, then you go to the bottom of the tree, here. And this is where you're going to remove a lot of the excess soil. There's not that many roots there anyway. And you just comb it out from the edges inward. Once you've got it combed out to your satisfaction, then we can do the sides. There are a few too many roots underneath. Any roots that are coming directly under the trunk can be removed. Okay, so now we will remove some of the soil on the sides. So we will slightly comb out the roots. Now this tree has been grown in a very well-draining medium, so that we'll have a lot of fine feeder roots. That permits me to really remove quite a few roots without compromising the survival of the tree. I will leave enough feeder roots to keep the tree in a very healthy state. So, it's done. Okay, now we will have to see whether it'll fit in its pot. Yes, no problem at all getting it into its pot there. So I will remove this old soil and we will be potting it up into some fresh new soil. So here is the repotting now. This pot actually has different designs, different images on the sides. Here we have a beautiful landscape. On the sides, practically nothing. and then here a far mountain view. We are going to take the most gorgeous side here, the landscape side, as our front. And we do want to put a little bit of coarse soil mixture. It's actually medium sized. The pot is so small that we have to use quite fine soil in the pot. So this is quite fine, as you can see. It's a mixture of about 70% akadama and 30% pumice or chabasai, okay? And we will fit this tree right into the pot. Now, it's sitting a little bit high, so I will have to remove a little bit more soil from under here. Yeah, that's pretty good there. Okay, so now we have to anchor it into the pot. This is where we put our wire through the root ball. We slide it between the big roots so it'll hold. There's many ways of tying in a tree, but in this case, this is the most common. And because the tree is larger on this side, you do have to off-center it, okay? Leaving more space here and a bit less right over here, okay? Because this is the larger side of our triangle. So, here we go. Tie the tree in here. And once you get those wires through, we have to tighten them. Every time you turn, you have to pull on it. Otherwise, your wire will break. Now, I am trying to make sure that the tree is actually slanting toward the front. It's all the same rules, be it a big tree or a small tree. It's all exactly the same procedures that you go through. I'm just trying to make sure, sometimes when you're tying it in, the tree actually moves back toward the center, and I do not want the tree in the center. So here we are. We've off-centered it again. Cut the excess wire and just push it under the ground to hide it. There. Okay. Now we have to infill it with some finer bonsai soil. This here is about 2 millimeter. It's the same bonsai soil as the medium, but it's just a little bit finer. And the same proportions also. So it's again 70% akadama and about 30% pumice or chabasai, which is a form of pumice that comes from Montpellier in southern France. And you don't want to stab with the chopstick. You insert it and work the soil into the root ball between the larger roots. Don't be afraid of using your fingers. Fingers can actually feel for air pockets and fill them up. And also, your fingers will not break or harm delicate little feeder roots. Okay. sometimes the roots just don't want to go down. In that case, what I do is I just make a little pin with the wire. I'll grab a little piece of wire, make a little U-shaped pin, and pin the root down so it won't come up again. Next time you repot, you can just remove that. Okay, well, there is the potted tree. Now I am going to have to water it. The best way to water it is by soaking it in a tub where the water comes right up to the edge of the pot for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll put some moss on. So now the tree has been watered. We're about ready, if we'd like to gussy it up a bit, put a little bit of moss on the top. This here is moss that has come from some of my other bonsai, so it's a nice variety. This one here is sort of a blue-green variety, cutting off some of the old soil underneath it. This variety is called Grewia argenteum. I really like this variety, and it withstands the sun very, very well. So what you have to do is put it on the top and really press it down and apply the moss in very small pieces, not large pieces. Moss does not have roots, so you really have to make it sink in. This piece is very large, so we're going to reduce the size of it a little bit. One more piece should be enough. Has to be pretty from all sides. I've already removed the excess soil from the bottom of this moss here, so we don't have to worry about that. And finally, just the last little bit in this corner. Whoops. Here we go. Spray it a bit so it'll... Moss has no roots. You really have to keep it moist and press it down so it'll be in very close contact with your new soil. Okay. So, this one is done. So this is the end result here of our little Grewia bonsai in a lovely little Japanese pot. So this is the beginning of a new life for this small Mame Grewia bonsai. Take good care of it. It's just been repotted, so it needs to be sprayed often, kept in a very bright area, but not in direct sunlight for 2 or 3 weeks, and only start fertilizing it in about a month. As I said, in South Africa, where it originates, they do lose their leaves in winter. So just during the winter, keep it in a nice cool room, and it'll bud out in the spring again and start sending out new growth. And you should have beautiful flowers all summer long. Wonderful little tree for Shohin bonsai.